used to think pain was something you could hide. That if you smiled hard enough, pretended long enough, and spoke softly enough, no one would ever know how deeply you were breaking inside. But pain has a way of leaking through. In your silence, in your trembling voice, in the way your eyes stopped shining and mine did. The day my stepsister moved in, my world stopped being mine. Before she came, it was just me and my father. Small, quiet, but safe. After my mother passed, I built my own kind of peace. A fragile one made of books, quiet dinners, and long evenings by the window. Then one morning, he told me she and her mother would be moving in. He said it like it was something good, like family was finally being whole again. But some families, I learned, are better when they're broken. She walked into our house like she'd always belonged there. Perfect hair, perfect smile, perfect tone when she called my father Dad. And I stood in the corner, clutching the old mug my mother used to drink from, watching as the world I knew dissolved. At first, it was small things. Her perfume where my mother's scent used to be. Her laughter replacing our silence. Her shoes by the door. Her clothes in the closet. But soon, it was everything. My father started forgetting. He forgot to ask if I'd eaten. He forgot my birthdays. He forgot that once upon a time, I was his whole world. And she noticed. Oh, she noticed every single crack in me and smiled. She had a way of speaking that cut without ever raising her voice. She would look at me and say things like, "Wow, you really don't know how to dress, do you?" Or, "No wonder Dad worries about you. You're just so plain." It sounds small, doesn't it? But small wounds bleed too, slowly, quietly, until one day you look down and realize you've lost too much of yourself to survive. I tried to fight it. I tried to be louder, brighter, more like her. But every attempt was met with laughter, soft, mocking laughter that wrapped itself around my insecurities and squeezed. And my father, he laughed with her sometimes. That's what broke me. Not her words, not her beauty, but his silence. The man who once told me I was enough now looked at me like I was a reminder of a life he'd rather forget. I started disappearing, slowly. Stopped talking at dinner. Stopped asking to go out. Stopped existing where she stood. I'd go to my room at night and stare at my reflection, eyes swollen from holding back tears, lips trembling from the weight of things unsaid. Sometimes I'd whisper, "You're okay. You're okay." But even my own voice didn't believe me anymore. Then came the day that changed everything. It was a school event. Something simple. Something I never wanted to go to. But my father insisted. He said, "Your stepsister is performing, and I want us to be there as a family." So I went. I sat in the audience, watching her shine under the lights, her perfect smile, her perfect posture, her perfect world. And then, when the host called her name for the award, she didn't thank me or our father. She thanked her real mom for always believing in her. The audience clapped. My father clapped. And I just sat there, invisible. Afterward, when we were leaving, she turned to me and said, "You must be used to this by now," watching from the background. And then she laughed. That laugh, that cruel, sweet laugh, was the sound that burned itself into my chest that night. Something in me broke, but not the weak part. The part that always stayed quiet. The part that waited for someone else to defend me. That part died. I went home, locked myself in my room, and for the first time, I didn't cry. I just stared at the mirror, at the girl they had all made me believe was small. And I said to her, "They think they've won. Let's show them they haven't." That was the night my silence ended, and my rise began. Stay till the end, because what happened next changed everything. If you've ever been underestimated, ignored, or mocked, this story is for you. Like, subscribe, and stay with me. Because what's coming next will make you believe in your own quiet strength again. The night I decided to rise, I didn't know how. I had no plan, no roadmap, no guide to follow. All I had was pain, raw, silent, endless pain. And for the first time, I didn't want to drown in it. I wanted to build something from it. So I started small. Every morning before school. I'd wake up early, earlier than anyone else. I'd make my father's tea, set the table, and leave from my room quietly. Not because I wanted to please them, but because I needed peace before they woke up and filled the air with noise. I started journaling. Every insult, every humiliation, every tear, I poured them onto a paper, page after page, until the pain didn't feel like chaos anymore. It started to look like purpose. That journal became my therapy. It didn't judge me. It didn't mock me. It listened. And slowly, I started seeing myself through new eyes. Not as the forgotten daughter, not as the plain one, but as someone who had survived. Someone who still showed up every single day, despite being pushed down over and over. It's strange how healing begins quietly, like light sneaking through the cracks of a closed curtain. You don't notice it at first. And then one day, the room doesn't feel so dark anymore. At school, I stopped sitting in the corners. I began raising my hand in class again. I started reading more, not to escape, but to learn, to grow, to become someone even my pain couldn't recognize. My stepsister noticed. Of course, she did. Her eyes always searched for reasons to remind me of where I stood. But now, my silence unnerved her. "Why are you smiling so much lately?" she'd ask. "No reason," I'd reply. And that no reason, it terrified her more than any argument ever could. Because she was used to me breaking, crying, explaining myself. And now I was just quiet, unbothered, glowing in ways she couldn't understand. One afternoon, she came into my room without knocking. She picked up my journal, the one I guarded like my life. I froze. "What's this?" she said, flipping through the pages. Her eyes skimmed my words, my pain, my healing, my thoughts. She smirked. "You really think writing all this will make you special? You're pathetic." She dropped it on my bed and walked away. I should have cried. I didn't. Because I realized something in that moment. She wasn't laughing at my weakness anymore. She was laughing because she felt my strength coming, and she didn't know how to stop it. That night, I took my journal, walked outside, and sat under the stars. I remember whispering to the sky, "I won't let her story become mine." And from that night forward, everything I did, every word I wrote, every book I read, every step I took was toward one goal: becoming untouchable. Months passed. I joined debate club, volunteered for the school newspaper, started working on a scholarship essay that could change my life. And I didn't tell anyone, not even my father, because I wanted the world to see me rise without noise, without begging for validation, without needing applause. But life has a way of testing you right before it rewards you. And my test came in the form of betrayal. Again, the day before my scholarship results. My stepsister found my essay draft on the desk. She read it, and when she realized how good it was, she copied it, changed the name, submitted it as her own. When the results came out, she won. Her name was announced in front of the entire school. Applause. Pictures. My father beaming with pride. And me? I stood there, in the back, again. My essay in her hands. My dream in her smile. But this time, I didn't cry. Not a single tear. Because I realized something powerful. You don't need people to know your worth for it to exist. That night, while she celebrated downstairs, I sent an email to the scholarship committee. Attached my original draft. Dated, time-stamped, signed by my teacher from the early review. I didn't accuse her. I didn't beg them to reconsider. I just told the truth. Calmly, clearly, confidently. 3 days later, everything changed. The committee called my father. Told him there had been a plagiarism issue. Told him the real author had been verified. Told him I had earned it. He was silent the whole time. My stepsister cried, not from guilt, but from humiliation. And for the first time, he looked at me differently. Not with pity, not with neglect, but with something closer to realization. I didn't say I told you so. I just smiled, packed my bags, and prepared to leave for college. As I zipped up my suitcase, she came into my room again, her eyes red, voice trembling. "You think you're better than me now?" she said. I looked at her, this girl who once mocked my pain, fed off my insecurities, and stole my words, and I said softly, "No." I just stopped being less, and then I walked past her, past the years of silence, past the pain she built around me, past everything that used to hold me back. I left home with nothing but a suitcase, a notebook, and peace. Peace I earned. Peace she could never take from me. It's strange how time changes everything. People, places, even memories, they all soften, blur, fade. But some moments never leave you. It had been 7 years since I left that house. 7 years since I last saw her, or my father. 7 years since I promised myself I'd build a life so bright they'd have to squint to see me. And I did. It wasn't easy. I worked part-time through college, barely sleeping, barely eating some days. There were nights I cried myself to exhaustion, wondering if it was all worth it. But then I'd remember her face, that smirk, that cruel laugh, the way she said, "You'll never be like me." And that memory became fuel. I burned it for warmth, for drive, for power. By the time I graduated, I had awards on my wall, a published article, and a voice that people listened to, not because I screamed the loudest, but because I had something to say. I got a job at a publishing house, one of the best in the city. It was poetic, really. The girl whose words were once mocked was now making a living from them. Years passed in peace. I learned to love the silence again, but this time, it was mine. Not the silence of neglect, but of choice. The quiet peace of a woman who built her world brick by brick. And then, one ordinary Tuesday morning, the past walked right back into my life. I was at the office, reviewing a manuscript when my assistant came in. "Someone's here to see you," she said. "She says she knows you from before." I looked up, and there she was, my stepsister. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. She looked smaller, not physically, but emotionally. Her confidence was gone, replaced by something fragile, something human. She smiled awkwardly. "Hi." I didn't know what to say. All the old memories, the laughter, the insults, the betrayal, they flooded back. But they didn't sting the same way anymore. It was like remembering pain from a dream. She sat down across from me, fidgeting with her hands. "I read about you," she said quietly. "You're doing amazing things." I nodded. "Thank you." She hesitated, then sighed. "I messed up. Back then, I was cruel. I know it's too late to say sorry, but I am." Her voice cracked, and for the first time, I saw guilt, real, trembling guilt, in her eyes. I stayed silent, not out of spite, but because there was nothing left to say. Sometimes silence says more than forgiveness ever could. She told me she'd never finished college, that her life fell apart after the plagiarism scandal, that her relationship with my father was strained, and he often brought up my name with pride now, something that ate away at her. When she finished, she looked up at me and whispered, "You won, didn't you?" I smiled softly. No, I said. I healed. She looked confused. But I meant it. Because revenge wasn't in seeing her suffer. It was in knowing I no longer needed her apology to move on. After she left, I sat by my window that evening, watching the city lights. And for the first time, I didn't feel the ache of old memories. Just gratitude for every pain, every insult, every lonely night that forced me to grow. A few months later, I received a letter from my father. He wrote that he was proud of me, that he finally saw what he'd been blind to for years. He said, "You were never less. I just wasn't man enough to see your light." I didn't cry. I smiled because I had already forgiven him long before he asked. Not for him, but for myself. Today, when I look back, I don't see the girl who was mocked. I see the woman who rose, who turned her pain into art, her silence into strength, her story into survival. And maybe that's what life really is, not about proving them wrong, but about proving to yourself that you were always enough. I still keep that old journal. The pages yellowed, the ink faded, but it's my reminder. Every scar I once tried to hide became a part of my voice. And that voice, now, helps others find theirs. So if you're listening to me right now, wondering if your pain will ever end, it will. But not because someone will save you. Because one day, you'll save yourself. And when you do, you'll understand the best revenge is peace. Because nothing unsettles those who hurt you more than watching you live beautifully after they tried to break you.